This innovative marketing automation system will revolutionize how we approach client engagement and generate an estimated $2.3 million in additional revenue over the next 18 months. Those were my exact words from the presentation I had spent 6 months perfecting, but they were coming out of my manager's mouth as she stood confidently before the board of directors. My name is Madison Parker. I'm 29 years old, and I work as a senior marketing analyst at Pinnacle Digital Solutions in downtown Chicago. As I sat in that boardroom at 2:15 p.m. on what should have been the biggest day of my career, watching Rebecca Chen present my life-changing project as her own brilliant innovation, I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, something much more dangerous. Clarity. Rebecca has truly outdone herself with this comprehensive analysis, proclaimed James Morrison, our chief operating officer, as he flipped through the presentation slides I had created during countless late nights and weekends. The projected ROI of 847% over 24 months is simply extraordinary. I remained perfectly still in my seat, hands folded neatly in my lap, watching Rebecca bask in praise that belonged to me. When CEO Catherine Williams asked about implementation timelines, Rebecca stumbled slightly. Of course she did, since she had no idea about the actual technical requirements I had spent weeks researching. But she recovered quickly with vague corporate speak about agile methodologies and cross-functional synergies. What Rebecca didn't know, what nobody in that room except Catherine and I knew, was that Catherine Williams had been my sorority sister at Northwestern University, Kappa Delta, pledge class of 2012. We had stayed in touch casually, over the years, the way sorority sisters do, exchanging holiday cards and LinkedIn updates. More importantly, Catherine had been the one I'd texted 3 months ago when I first started noticing Rebecca's suspicious behavior. The irony was almost poetic. Rebecca had been so focused on stealing credit for my work that she'd forgotten to actually understand it. Let me back up and explain how I got to this moment. Sitting calmly while watching my career get hijacked in high definition, I joined Pinnacle Digital Solutions straight out of graduate school 2 years ago, armed with an MBA in marketing analytics and stars in my eyes. The company specialized in digital marketing solutions for mid-size corporations, and I was thrilled to land a position on their strategy development team. Rebecca Chen had been my manager from day one, a sharp, ambitious woman in her mid-30s who had climbed the corporate ladder quickly after joining the company 4 years earlier. Initially, I admired Rebecca. She was confident, articulate, and seemed to have a talent for positioning our team's work in the best possible light with senior management. She took credit generously, sure, but that seemed normal for a manager. I was young, eager to learn, and willing to work twice as hard as anyone else to prove myself. The first red flag should have been the Morrison Industries project last September. I had developed a comprehensive social media strategy that increased their engagement rates by 340% and directly generated $847,000 in new sales over 3 months. Rebecca presented the results to the executive team as our innovative approach, but when the industry publication Marketing Excellence Weekly wanted to feature the campaign, somehow only Rebecca's name appeared in the article. When I asked about it, she smiled and said, "Don't worry, Madison. Your time will come. Right now, it's important for the team to have strong leadership, representation." I accepted that explanation because I wanted to believe in playing the long game. I was building something bigger. The something bigger was Project Artemis, my comprehensive marketing automation system that would integrate customer data analysis, predictive modeling, and personalized content delivery in ways that could transform how mid-size companies competed with corporate giants. I had started developing the concept in my spare time, using anonymized datasets and my own advanced analytics training to create something truly revolutionary. By November, I had a working prototype. By December, I had preliminary results from a small test group that were nothing short of extraordinary. A 23% increase in customer retention, 456% improvement in lead quality scores, and an average revenue increase of 67% per client within 90 days. I was sitting on something that could change the entire trajectory of Pinnacle Digital Solutions. That's when I made what Rebecca probably thought was my biggest mistake. I shared my research with her. "This is incredible work, Madison," she said, reviewing my documentation in her corner office overlooking the Chicago River. "Absolutely incredible. But you understand we need to be strategic about how we present this to the board. Something this big needs careful positioning." I nodded eagerly. "Of course. I was thinking we could start with a pilot program, maybe 3 or 4 mid-tier clients, and then scale based on results?" Rebecca's smile was warm and encouraging. "Exactly the kind of thorough thinking that's going to take you far in this company. Let me review everything you've put together, and we'll schedule a presentation with the executive team. This could be huge for both of us." I handed over my complete research files, implementation plans, cost projections, and client data analysis. Everything. Because I trusted her, and because I genuinely believed we were building something together. That was my last direct involvement in Project Artemis. Over the following weeks, Rebecca scheduled several strategy sessions that I was mysteriously excluded from due to conflicting meetings that seemed to appear on my calendar at the last minute. When I asked about progress, she would give vague updates about fine-tuning the approach and getting executive buy-in for the framework. The second red flag came in January when I overheard Rebecca on a conference call with the executive team discussing her innovative marketing automation concept. Through her office door, I could hear her explaining the predictive modeling algorithms. My algorithms, using the exact phrasing from my documentation. But I still didn't act. I was still playing by the rules, assuming good intentions, believing that my contributions would be properly acknowledged when it mattered. I was also, admittedly, a little intimidated by the political dynamics. Rebecca had the ear of senior management, strong relationships across departments, and a reputation as someone you didn't want to cross. My sorority sister Catherine had taught me something different, though. During our college days, she used to say, "The most dangerous opponents are the ones who let you think you're winning while they're actually 3 moves ahead." Catherine had been a chess player, student government president, and the kind of person who could smile sweetly while systematically dismantling anyone who underestimated her. The third red flag, and the one that finally activated my own strategic thinking, came in February. I was working late, as usual, when I noticed Rebecca's office light was still on. I walked by her open door to say goodnight and saw my Project Artemis documentation spread across her desk, but with my name crossed out and replaced with hers on every single page. Not edited, not revised, not credited as developed with Madison Parker, or based on research by the strategy development team. Just my name, methodically removed and replaced, as if I had never existed. That's when something fundamental shifted inside me. I wasn't angry. Anger would have been unproductive. I was focused, methodical. I finally understood exactly who I was dealing with, and I began planning accordingly. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done since my sorority days. I texted Catherine Williams. "Hey, hope you're doing well." Random question. "Do you have a few minutes to chat sometime? I could use some advice from someone who's navigated corporate dynamics successfully." "No rush, just whenever you're free," Catherine responded within an hour. "Of course. Always happy to help a sister. Are you free for coffee this weekend?" We met that Saturday at a quiet cafe in Lincoln Park, away from downtown and the possibility of running into colleagues. Catherine looked exactly like the successful CEO she'd become. Sharp suit, confident posture, but still the same warm smile I remembered from college. "So what's going on?" she asked after we'd caught up on the basics. "You sounded like something was bothering you." I chose my words carefully. "I'm dealing with a situation at work where I think someone might be taking credit for my research. I'm not sure how to handle it professionally." Catherine's expression sharpened immediately. "Tell me everything." I laid out the entire timeline, Project Artemis, my research, Rebecca's increasing exclusion of me from meetings, and what I'd seen on her desk. I showed Catherine copies of my original documentation, complete with timestamps and my digital signatures on all files. "Madison," Catherine said quietly when I finished, "you're not dealing with someone taking credit for your research. You're dealing with someone committing fraud. If she presents this as her own work to a board of directors, that's not just unethical. It could be legally actionable depending on how it's positioned. I don't want to cause drama, I said. I just want to make sure my work is properly recognized. Catherine smiled. The same smile I remembered from when she was dismantling opponents in student government debates. Oh, honey, there's not going to be any drama. There's going to be justice, and I'm going to help you get it. That's how I learned that Catherine Williams had been the CEO of Pinnacle Digital Solutions for 8 months. You didn't know? She asked when she saw my shocked expression. I figured that's why you reached out. I joined the company last July when they acquired my previous firm. The coincidence was so perfect, it felt like divine intervention. But Catherine was quick to set boundaries. I can't show you any favoritism, she said firmly, but I can make sure that proper procedures are followed and that credit is given where it's due. If you really developed this system and you can prove it, then we need to make sure that's documented properly. I nodded eagerly. I have everything. All my original files, research notes, even email timestamps showing when I first started working on different components. Good. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to continue acting completely normal at work. Don't confront Rebecca, don't change your behavior, don't give any indication that you suspect anything. Can you do that? Yes. Meanwhile, I want you to document everything. Every interaction, every meeting you're excluded from, every time she discusses your work without crediting you. Create a timeline with evidence. And Madison? Catherine's expression became serious. I need to know that every single thing you're telling me is completely accurate. Because if Rebecca is really doing what you think she's doing, the consequences are going to be severe. Everything I've told you is the truth, I said. And I can prove all of it. That began the most professionally challenging 2 months of my life. Watching Rebecca develop presentations using my research while systematically erasing my contributions. Sitting quietly in meetings where she discussed her innovative approach to problems I had solved months earlier. Smiling and nodding when colleagues complimented her brilliant strategic thinking. But Catherine had given me a framework for turning my frustration into fuel. Every time Rebecca excluded me from a meeting, I documented RSAT. Every time she used my exact research language, I recorded it. Every time she claimed credit for my innovations, I created a paper trail. I also kept working, developing additional components of the Artemis system that Rebecca knew nothing about. Advanced analytics modules, integration protocols, scalability frameworks, all properly documented and secured in my personal research files. If Rebecca wanted to steal my work, I was going to make sure she only got the basic version, while I retained everything that actually made it valuable. The documentation process revealed the full scope of what Rebecca was doing. She wasn't just taking credit for Project Artemis. She had been systematically claiming ownership of innovative ideas from multiple team members for years. My research into previous projects showed a pattern of brilliant Rebecca Chen innovations that coincidentally emerged shortly after junior team members had been excluded from strategic meetings. I shared all of this with Catherine during our monthly sorority sister coffee dates. She never gave me inside information about executive discussions, but she provided invaluable guidance about corporate procedures, documentation requirements, and legal protections for intellectual property. The most important thing, Catherine told me in March, is that when this comes to light, there's no question about who did the actual work. Rebecca is digging herself into a hole. Your job is to make sure she keeps digging while you build an airtight case. The key moment came in early April when Rebecca announced that she would be presenting her revolutionary marketing automation system to the board of directors at the monthly executive meeting. She had been working on finalizing the strategic framework for months, she explained to our team, and was finally ready to share her innovation with senior leadership. This is the kind of breakthrough thinking that distinguishes exceptional leaders, she said during our team meeting. The ability to synthesize complex market dynamics into actionable strategic solutions. I nodded politely and took notes, just as I had been doing for months. But that evening, I sent Catherine a detailed summary of Rebecca's exact words. along with comparative excerpts from my original Project Artemis documentation showing identical language and concepts. Catherine's response was brief. Board meeting is next. Tuesday at 2 p.m. The situation will be resolved appropriately. Which brings us back to that boardroom, where I sat listening to Rebecca present 6 months of my work as her own brilliant innovation. The presentation was flawless, because I had created it to be flawless. Rebecca had my research, my data analysis, my implementation timeline, and my ROI projections. She delivered it confidently, fielding basic questions from board members who were clearly impressed by the thoroughness and sophistication of the proposal. The projected implementation cost is $847,000 over 12 months, Rebecca explained, but the conservative revenue increase estimate is $2.3 million, giving us that 847% ROI that James mentioned. She even used my specific numbers, down to the exact dollar amounts I had calculated. Rebecca, Catherine said smoothly, this is really impressive work. The level of detail in the analytics modeling is particularly sophisticated. Can you walk us through how you developed the predictive algorithms? I watched Rebecca's confidence falter slightly. Well, it's based on advanced statistical modeling combined with machine learning applications. Specifically, which statistical models? Catherine pressed gently. And which machine learning frameworks did you use for the predictive components? Rebecca began using generic technical terminology, clearly hoping to gloss over the details. But Catherine wasn't letting her off the hook. I'm curious about the data validation process, Catherine continued. How did you verify the accuracy of your predictive models? Standard industry validation protocols, Rebecca replied. But her voice was becoming less certain. Could you be more specific? Did you use cross-validation? Bootstrap sampling? What was your approach to avoiding overfitting in the model training? The room was getting uncomfortable. Rebecca was clearly struggling with questions about technical details that she should have been able to answer easily if she had actually developed the system. Catherine, said James Morrison, maybe we should focus on the strategic implications rather than getting lost in technical details. Catherine smiled pleasantly. Of course. I'm just impressed by the sophistication of the work, and I want to make sure we understand the full scope of what Rebecca has developed here. She turned back to Rebecca. One more question. The customer segmentation analysis in Section 4 is particularly innovative. Can you explain how you developed that approach? It's based on comprehensive market research and customer behavior analysis, Rebecca said weakly. Catherine made a note on her papers. Madison, you've been working on the strategy development team with Rebecca. What's your assessment of this proposal? Every person in the room turned to look at me. Rebecca's expression was carefully controlled, but I could see the tension in her shoulders. She was probably expecting me to offer generic praise for her brilliant leadership. Instead, I opened my laptop. I think there are some important details that should be clarified, I said calmly, particularly regarding the development timeline and research methodology. What do you mean? Asked James. I turned my laptop screen toward the board, showing a detailed timeline of file creation dates, research milestones, and documentation, based on my involvement in the preliminary research for this project. I have some concerns about the technical feasibility of the implementation timeline Rebecca has proposed. Rebecca's face went pale. Madison, I'm not sure this is the appropriate time to discuss technical details. Actually, said Catherine, I think it's exactly the appropriate time. Madison, what technical details are you concerned about? Well, the predictive modeling algorithms that Rebecca mentioned are based on gradient boosting. Frameworks with ensemble validation, specifically using XGBoost libraries integrated with customer lifetime value calculations derived from RFM analysis matrices. The statistical significance testing used Welch's t-test for unequal variances with Bonferroni correction for multiple comparisons. The room was silent. I had just answered all the technical questions that Rebecca had been unable to address. I have documentation showing the complete development process, including data, pre-processing methodologies, feature engineering protocols, and model performance metrics across validation sets. I continued. If there are questions about implementation feasibility, I can provide detailed technical specifications. James Morrison was staring at his copy of the presentation, then at Rebecca, then at me. Madison, how exactly were you involved in developing this system? I developed it, I said simply. The entire system, the research, the algorithms, the implementation framework, the ROI calculations, and the client testing protocol. All of it. Rebecca found her voice. Madison contributed to some of the preliminary research, but the strategic framework and innovative approach are… Actually, Catherine interrupted, I think we need to take a step back here. Madison, do you have documentation to support what you're saying? I opened a new folder on my laptop. Complete documentation. Original research files with creation dates, email. Records showing the development timeline, preliminary test results from client pilots, and technical specifications for every component of the system. I clicked through screens showing months of work, research documents, data analysis, email correspondences, even photos of whiteboard sessions where I had worked through algorithmic approaches. Everything was time-stamped and verified. Rebecca, Catherine said quietly, would you like to explain how Madison seems to have detailed technical knowledge of work you're presenting as your own innovation? The boardroom had become completely silent. Rebecca was staring at my laptop screen, watching months of documentation scroll past. Documentation that proved, beyond any possible doubt, that Project Artemis was entirely my work. There seems to be some confusion about individual contributions versus team collaboration, Rebecca said desperately. Obviously, Madison was involved in data collection, but the strategic vision and implementation framework. Rebecca, Catherine's voice cut through the room like a blade. Would you like to see the emails Madison sent me 3 months ago documenting her concerns about intellectual property theft? Rebecca's face went white. Or perhaps, Catherine continued, you'd like to explain why Madison's name was systematically removed from every document in your office and replaced with yours? The room erupted in whispered conversations. James Morrison was flipping through presentation materials with new eyes, clearly seeing the disconnect between Rebecca's vague answers and the sophisticated technical work being discussed. I think, said Catherine, standing up, we need to suspend this presentation pending a thorough review of project development and intellectual property ownership. Rebecca, please remain after the meeting. Everyone else, thank you for your time. As board members filed out, casting confused glances between Rebecca and me, Catherine remained standing at the head of the conference table. Madison, thank you for bringing this to our attention through proper channels. Please send me all of your documentation by end of business today. Rebecca, HR will be contacting you within the hour. Rebecca finally found her voice as the room emptied. Catherine, there's been a misunderstanding. Madison did contribute to the research, but the leadership and strategic vision. Rebecca, Catherine said coldly, you presented 6 months of someone else's work to a board of directors and claimed it as your own innovation. That's not a misunderstanding. That's fraud. I gathered my materials quietly, watching Rebecca realize that her career at Pinnacle Digital Solutions was over. She turned to me desperately. Madison, you have to understand. I was trying to position the work strategically. I was going to make sure you got recognition. No, I said simply. You were going to take credit for my work and hope I was too intimidated to do anything about it. Rebecca's desperation shifted into anger. You went behind my back. You manipulated the situation. I documented theft, I corrected, and I reported it to the appropriate authority. Catherine was watching the exchange with the same analytical expression I remembered from our college days. Rebecca, I suggest you consult with an attorney. HR will be in touch about the investigation process and your employment status. My employment status? Rebecca's voice cracked. You committed intellectual property fraud in front of the entire executive team, Catherine said matter-of-factly. Your employment status is terminated, effective immediately. Rebecca stared at both of us. finally understanding the scope of what had just happened. She had walked into that boardroom thinking she was about to claim credit for career-defining work, and instead had publicly exposed herself as a fraud. Security will escort you to collect your personal items, Catherine added. All company materials, including any documentation related to Project Artemis, will remain here. As Rebecca left the conference room in stunned silence, Catherine turned to me with a slight smile. "Well played, sister. I just documented the truth," I replied. "No, you did more than that. You built an airtight case, gathered irrefutable evidence, and let your opponent destroy herself through her own arrogance. That's strategic thinking." The aftermath was swift and comprehensive. Pinnacle Digital Solutions investigation revealed that Rebecca had been systematically stealing credit for innovative work from junior team members for over 2 years. 3 other employees came forward with similar experiences once word spread about what had happened. Rebecca was not just fired, she was blacklisted within the industry. When word got out about intellectual property theft at the executive level, her reputation became toxic. The tight-knit world of Chicago digital marketing has a long memory for that kind of betrayal. Meanwhile, Project Artemis was officially credited to me and fast-tracked for company-wide implementation. The full system, including the advanced components I had developed while Rebecca was stealing the basic version, exceeded even my optimistic projections. Within 6 months, we had generated over $4.2 million in additional revenue and attracted 12 major new clients, specifically because of the innovative marketing automation capabilities. I was promoted to Director of Strategic Innovation with a 67% salary increase, a dedicated research team, and a budget to develop the next generation of marketing analytics tools. More importantly, I had learned to trust my instincts and document everything. Catherine and I still meet for coffee monthly, though now it's mostly to discuss industry trends and strategic partnerships between Pinnacle and other firms. She taught me that the most effective revenge isn't emotional. It's simply ensuring that truth wins over manipulation. 6 months later, I learned through industry contacts that Rebecca had been unable to find another position in marketing analytics. Her interviews consistently fell apart when potential employers asked technical questions about the innovative work listed on her resume, work she had stolen from others and never actually understood. There's a certain poetic justice in that. She had built her reputation on other people's intelligence and innovation, but when forced to demonstrate actual competency, she had nothing to offer. As for Project Artemis, it became the foundation for Pinnacle Digital Solutions' expansion into enterprise-level marketing automation. We're now competing directly with firms 3 times our size and winning because we have tools and capabilities that genuinely innovative thinking made possible. The experience taught me something important about corporate dynamics and personal integrity. Bullies and fraudsters count on their victims being too intimidated, too polite, or too naive to fight back effectively. Rebecca succeeded for years because talented people like me assumed good intentions and played by rules she was systematically violating. But the most dangerous opponents, as Catherine had taught me long ago, are the ones who let you think you're winning while they're actually 3 moves ahead. Rebecca thought she was manipulating a naive young employee who would accept being marginalized and exploited. Instead, she was giving a strategic thinker with impeccable documentation skills and powerful allies all the evidence needed to destroy her career. Sometimes karma needs a little help. Sometimes justice requires patience, planning, and perfect execution. And sometimes the best revenge is simply ensuring that competence and integrity triumph over manipulation and theft. Rebecca learned all of these lessons the hard way. I learned them the smart way. And Project Artemis? It's still generating millions in revenue, properly credited to the person who actually created it, which, in the end, is exactly how it should be. The sweetest part of the entire experience wasn't watching Rebecca's career implode, though I admit that was satisfying. The sweetest part was building something genuinely innovative, seeing it succeed beyond my wildest projections, and knowing that my work was making a real difference for the company and our clients. That's the thing about authentic achievement versus stolen credit. Real innovation creates lasting value. Fraud just creates temporary illusions that eventually collapse under scrutiny. Rebecca found that out in the most public and devastating way possible. And I learned that sometimes the best way to handle office politics isn't to play the game better. It's to change the rules entirely. Justice, it turns out, is a dish best served with comprehensive documentation and strategic patience. And maybe, occasionally, with a little help from your sorority sisters.